2 times now, Alex, that you've waited for the day I upload a video, the very day, to drop a crazy good cannon fodder. Hey, look, it's me. I still haven't gone back to talk about the couple I missed, but hey people, Mark here. Welcome back to another ship breakdown for a brand new ship. This was featured in a new cannon fodder after its first appearance, which was in Halo Outcasts, excuse me, which I happened to have finished just a couple days ago. This video contains spoilers for the latest Halo book, that, Halo Outcasts by Troy Denning. There are some cool lore reveals in there, so I highly recommend giving it a read. The Arbiter pattern sword frigate, at least that's what I assume it's called. I don't really know how to pronounce this, but Sword Frigate. That's a cool name for a pretty cool ship, I think. Known to humanity as the SCC-Class Sword Frigate, this small, stacked hull command frigate was formerly a part of the Covenant Navy. I do want to clarify. It is SCC. I think I say SSC a couple times during this video, but it's SCC. Just like the Karak Brigantine Man-O-War and the Hekarta pattern blockade runner that I did a video on a couple months back. Months and months ago, actually. Unlike those, however, the SSC class in service of the Swords of Sanghelios is not a vested ship, but something new. Not completely new, mind you. These ships found their origins sometime between the 3rd and 20th ages of Discovery in the 10th age of Discovery. I'm not sure when that takes place because there are actually some errors in the lore regarding these dates, but it's at the very least a few hundred years ago. That's in stark contrast to some of the Sangheli designs seen here that date back nearly 3,500 years. Measuring in at 860 meters, the tiny SSC class stayed relevant in the Covenant up until its last days. I wanted to clarify here, when I say tiny, I mean by Covenant standards. It's larger than any UNSC frigate by quite a bit. It's just that by Covenant standards, usually something under 900 meters you would think of as a corvette, like the Suitor pattern Corvette, which is 956 meters and is longer than this one that is considered a frigate, so, Serving as command ships for fleet detachments assigned security detail for the hegemony's outlying Tithe worlds. And again, we have another addition to the Covenant Tithe merchant fleet that we made in the Xanar pattern video. They have all the prerequisites for a typical Covenant ship: a pinch fusion reactor, repulsor engines, nano-laminate hull plating, and a borer-type slipspace drive, which is, if you're unaware, just the Covenant designation for a slipspace drive. They also filled the role of command ship for enforcement fleets, roughly equivalent to the UNSC's colonial military authority in their day. They would serve alongside the aforementioned Xanar pattern and most likely Camurosish pattern liches. With 4 hangar bays, it has the capability to carry with it at least 3 Phantoms, which it does in the book. We don't know any more than that. I wouldn't be surprised if something like this was used by the famed but underappreciated Thrall Slayer, who I made a YouTube short on a while back. I don't know if I can link those, but I guess this is a good time to try. Click in the top corner unless you can't. Unfortunately, most of these were destroyed during the Great Schism and various conflicts that followed, most likely once they were put in battle against things like the CAS, the CCS, even the vested ships, which were older but had more tonnage and firepower going for them. Not content to survive off the decaying carcass of the Covenant, the Arbiter has sought to build the Sanghelian identity of their own. In this effort, he has acquired some amount of Auser pattern frigates and modified them to fit the needs of the swords. And style, it seems, was high on the list. Of the very little we know of these ships, we know they are absolutely rocking the Swords of Sanghelios red and white that we see on their liches and armor. The modified Swords of Sanghelios variant has so far only been seen once, and their armament was not described. However, even if they had been, it's not like they would have been used to any effect in that book, but we'll get back to that later. The SSC has served as a test bed for design patterns that the San Shayum had kept out of the hands of Sangheli artisans up until the dissolution of the Covenant, a measure taken to prevent the production of more mutations like the CRS-class light cruiser. We talked about special modifications and training being given to Jirlhane crews in the breakdown of that ship, and I suspect, although this is not confirmed, many of these hidden designs could very well have been intentional. Much like Palpatine kept Vader well below his full potential to keep him from turning against him, I think the Prophets kept some potential improvements in ship designs away from the elites, especially once the Jirlhane came into the picture and gave them a new preferable Thrall race. This is evidenced by the Spear of Light, a CRS-class light cruiser that takes out several larger, supposedly more powerful ships all on its own. But anyway, the Sword of Harmony, the Arbiter's personal command frigate as of 2559, differentiated itself from other SCCs and many other Covenant ships in general in the amount of detail afforded to describing its interior. All of these observations take place during the Second Battle of Netherop in 2559, a conflict wherein the UNSC, Swords of Sanghelios, and the Banished all seek to steal a Guardian-killing weapon, the Divine Hand, away from the 7 Covenant loyalists hiding within a secret underground tunnel. The ship has something called a contemplation pit, which sounds similar to Captain Cutter's observation deck on the Spirit of Fire.
Vadam abruptly ended the conversation by stepping away from his shipmaster's station. He descended into the contemplation pit and stared down into endless brown clouds.
We also get a chance to observe more intricate Sangheli customs and witness firsthand the amount of subtlety and nuance that goes into the acknowledgement or undermining of respect and power. One of these displays was in the mess hall reserved specifically for obedientaries, which is a title that roughly translates to non-commissioned officer. For context, Krei Iomu is an oath warden, which is a role that is seen as distasteful and without much honor among Sangheli.
Iomu was already seated at the first saddle on the starboard side of the table. Vadam took the saddle on the aft end of the table, effectively flipping the cabin orientation and placing the Oath Warden on his left, a position that would not be interpreted by the arriving Kaidans as one of power. Iomu merely tilted his head in amusement, perhaps satisfied that Vadam had not actually ordered him to take a less prominent seat.
Geh-Talat arrived, then stopped in the door to consider the seating arrangements. The leaders that joined the Arbiter were not of Thel's typical retinue. In an effort to conceal his absence from Sanghelios from Cortana, he left behind his most trusted confidants, Entho Sarom, Uze-Taham, and Kola Beoth. He was instead joined by Kaidan's Geh-Talat, a small but wizened warrior about twice Vadam's age, whose clan had a long history with Vadam's, and Olabisi Veradai, the first ever female Kaidan who held the Arbiter in high regard out of gratitude and respect, but harbored great hatred for humans due to the destruction of her homeworld. Humans may not have destroyed Sapon Kal, but the fate of the planet was brought about by a human nova bomb, leaving a sour taste in Veradai's mouth for any dealings involving humanity. Beyond that, she is compelled to live a life of radical nonconformity to Sangheli norms, and in that vein she brought with her an entire lance of Sangheli Rangers, whom she secretly trained herself. Unfortunately, the entire Sangheli flotilla, consisting of the Sword of Harmony alongside 4 corvettes and a single medium destroyer, all of unknown classifications, were obliterated by one shot with the Divine Hand, after taking heavy damage from 2 Forerunner Harriers controlled by the Created's Prometheans. It could have been worse though. Artes Vadum was almost caught up in the fire of the Divine Hand and the attention of the Forerunner Harriers. Thankfully for him, he did not appear in the book.
Vadam found himself wishing he could recall his finest shipmaster, Artes Vadum, from the search for the Sanchayum who had gone into hiding following the end of the Human Covenant War. He would have relished bringing the full might of the Shadow of Intent to bear.
This most likely saved the ship and Artes, as there is no way it would have survived the destruction of the rest of the fleet. But yep, that is the Auzer pattern sword frigate. Not a whole lot of info, but it's still very cool. I'm glad the swords of Sanghelios are getting their own distinct look. This thing looks great. No armament is explicitly described, but we do see what looks like it could be some kind of guns on this Sword of Harmony. And again, it's very likely that there's almost no uniformity among these things, considering they're all, modified, reused, all that kind of stuff, that jazz. It looks very similar to the concepts for the Suitor pattern Corvette from Reach. But in any case, that's all I've got for today. The fundraiser for Sad Puppies is still up, so if you feel so inclined, I ask you to donate to it, but if not, there's the super thanks button. The super thanks button. The super thanks button.